Welcome to another episode in 2025 of the Chris Rod Mac Show. Every week we come together, we talk about the latest development in the AI space. We talk to interesting business leaders and entrepreneurs that are building the next generation innovation in the space. And I'm really excited to be here today with you guys and with my co-hosts, Max and Rod. Hi guys, how are you?
Hello everyone. Hi Max. Hi Chris.
Hello.
Awesome, guys. It's been a very interesting week, as we could expect, with the new Trump administration coming into a second term. Lots of rhetoric, lots of information and commentary has already been shed in the media. But we obviously want to talk about a very interesting development just released, I guess yesterday or the day before, around AI, an AI fund. So the US really is looking to maintain their forefront movement and forefront development of AI technology. And if I did not see it as a mistake or misunderstanding, I think they were talking about 500 billion in a fund to invest into data centers. There were very prominent people at the inauguration. We saw SoftBank and Oracle and OpenAI being present when it was announced. And basically the initial $100 billion are going to be deployed immediately into massive data centers. And Trump seems to be really supportive of it. I think he even canceled all the decrees around security around AI. I don't know, guys. What do you think about it? What do you make of it? Max, as an investor, what do you think about it?
I always think that money is just a way to incentivize more people to do things. And in this instance, the 500 million actually is contributed not just by the Americans, but also by the Japanese, right? Masayoshi Son coming in to try to, I guess, curry favors in a way from an AI project perspective. My general sense is, number one, there are people fighting to curry favors from the new president. I think we have seen it all. Every single billionaire CEO has probably changed their stance one way or another on certain topic in order to get closer to the administration. Number two, it's also about how Trump is trying to really make America great again, right? Pull everything back to America, like nationalization. I guess number three, they have the resources as well as the capability. The swelling of America is only going to get bigger. So super interesting. I think, if you are building AI, if this doesn't tell you, you have to somehow, your chances of success probably be slightly higher if you move to the US. It's just, it's all the signaling that he wants to show, as President Trump wants to show.
Yeah, Rod, what do you think about it?
There is so much here to disaggregate just from one single headline. And just 2 weeks ago, we had in our show this discussion how Microsoft just for this year had announced 80 billion on AI developments. And we're saying, wow, this is on the same level as the GDP of some countries. And now we had this consortium, as Max was saying, that intends to deploy up to 500 billion over 4 years. Apparently, 100 billion are committed. However, on social media, there was a whole debate because then Elon Musk came and said, actually, there is not that much money involved yet. So far, they have only secured 10 billion, which then created all this discussion of, why is he turning against Trump? Because so this is putting Trump in a bad light if they say 400 billion and Elon saying 10 billion and so on. But beside all this controversy and gossip, if we think about AI developments, we see here two things. One is this is being headed by OpenAI, and OpenAI is not open, it's closed. So you're basically you're renting a specific infrastructure from them. And with this, they will likely entrench themselves further in the market. They will secure their leadership, but also make it much more harder for anyone to start. So we were talking here in our show about developments in Asia, developments in Europe, and so on. So where is the European OpenAI? likely there will not be an European OpenAI, because who in Europe can come and invest 500 billion just on their own model development, on their own infrastructure development?
Rod, I think this should be the mantra. OpenAI is actually closed.
It is.
Yeah, it is, right? And what you're saying is totally true. I think we had another episode where we talked about this whole Aleph Alpha, the German OpenAI that got 500 million, and it was scandalous because they actually didn't get 500 million in funding. Here we're really talking about like 500 billion that's getting deployed within the space. And I think there are two observations I've made, which I thought were very interesting. First of all, just the people or the consortium of people that actually are investing into this. And as we just said, it's OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX, which is an Abu Dhabi-based fund. And it seems like, okay, as Max pointed out, it's the Japanese. I mean, obviously SoftBank has tons of money. Also, a lot of Middle Eastern money is in SoftBank's funds that are very interested in, being at the forefront. So we would maybe even see the Middle East rising based on that. And I think the other thought I had, well, it's the same thought, but Trump and Elon Musk are so intertwined now with politics and sort of like as a supporter. Now we have, Sam Altman also being present within the Trump inauguration. And I don't know, it just feels to me that Trump is also trying to diversify. It's not like putting all the eggs into one basket, trying to support multiple entrepreneurs. I even think Mark Zuckerberg attended the inauguration. I think that was one observation. I thought it was very interesting that, Trump doesn't only have his loyal followers, but sort of also is, trying to diversify perhaps. Then the second observation I had was around this whole competition with China and sort of like how the Americans try to position this as an answer to China. And also there, I'm wondering, is China really a threat? Has China been sort of like boasting about being at the forefront and dominating? I don't know, just like putting this out to you guys.
So we have a Chinese company called DeepSeek. For many, that might not be a well-known name, a household name. However, in the research community, in the AI community, it has gathered quite some attention because they provide their models free of cost, similar to what Meta does with their Llama models. DeepSeek from China does it with their own models. And just a few days ago, they had this announcement that they released a readily available, openly available model called R1 that it's supposed to be better than the latest OpenAI models. And we have to remember that with OpenAI, recently they decided not to get bigger models, let's say like GPT-5, GPT-6, but rather focus on a specific set of tasks. And they've been doing, for example, video with their Sora models. And now they also have a Sora ones for reasoning called O1. So you might have seen that instead of, for example, just getting an answer, they provide you with a plan. And this is particularly helpful if one is, for example, trying to do something that requires multiple steps, like a project. So instead of saying, hey, I want, let's say, like to publish a podcast, and then the answer will be, great, congratulations for doing a podcast, as it would be with, let's say, like a GPT-4, GPT-3, with GPT-01 from OpenAI. When you will say something like this, it will provide a plan. So you will need first to find co-host, and then you will need a record and so on. And this is seen as like a feature, because if we think about like human tasks, much everything is like divide and conquer from like a great idea in specific activities. And this is where it's headed. And so far, there was no real alternative. And then this Chinese company called DeepSeek comes in and offers this for free. So this is maybe like the only way how others can compete with OpenAI and, let's say, the US in general, in trying to provide this for free and then work on providing the infrastructure, I mean, like just the data centers, where people can like rent them and then deploy these free models.
So just to add, I guess from my side, it's quite ironic in a way, right? We always say that the US is, the great country in which they democratize all sorts of access to things. Now it feels like they're going the other way around to become massive and centralized. Whereas on the Chinese strategy, I felt like they almost didn't have a choice. They have to go the other way. Because I'm sure, if you read news, I don't know what's the I would say real economic situation in the market, but I'm sure at the moment there were a few things going on with a few hardship, with all the previous financial problems. So they can't probably afford to spend as much or as crazy, or even if they do, you wouldn't know. So it's quite ironic that, China took the other way to compete. That's, I guess, the second thing that I have in mind on the China versus US during the speech, or should I say in an article within FT, I think Trump actually said that, Stargate is going to produce 100,000 jobs and represent a victory against China. I find that funny. The reason why I said that is because we have seen this multiple times. Just because you get a lot of funding doesn't mean that you're working towards the most, I would say, most effective outcome. But at the same time, I don't doubt the Sam Altman, the Elon Musks of the world, that they can turn it around. So I guess it's just Trump being Trump. So yeah, that's
Definitely. And it's not 100 jobs, but 100,000 jobs that this 5 billion fund actually can create. And it is true. It's almost like, oh, China is a threat. We got to double down in order to stay ahead. And we do this in a way where OpenAI is actually closed. And it's actually quite ironic, as you say, because China has been quite open. I mean, there was just another news piece out on Tencent releasing a 3D modeling AI. So basically shaping different 3D shapes, and then also a studio to paint these shapes. So essentially this is relevant for any, let's say, cinematic movie that is based on 3D instead of 2D. But then there are also other use cases for that. And they have released this as an entirely new open source system. And I guess whenever we have an open source versus a closed source type of situation, the idea with open source is obviously to crowdsource intelligence and also maybe even become, more robust in terms of the system, but then also obviously to speed up the development of the system versus a closed one. We had that in university around open and closed systems. What is your take on that?
Another thought that was coming just now was that just before the Biden administration left, they enacted sort of almost like Cold War-like division of the world based on GPUs. So they set 3 categories for which countries get access to which hardware. And they have different lists, like the US plus Germany, around 10 other countries in total, that they have unrestricted, unfettered access to the latest and greatest GPU hardware from NVIDIA, for example. Then they set a second tier of other countries, for example, Latin America, those in Central and Eastern Europe, and so on, where they might get access. However, they need to request license and approval from the US. And then there was this third tier that they are not allowed access at all. And we can, of course, imagine which countries are the ones that are forbidden from procuring these very advanced GPUs. At the same time, those who are on the second tier, well, they will need the Corey favors from the US to be approved. So here again, we see that it's not only, let's say, this mold, this closeness in the type of technology that gets available for others to make use. So not only there is OpenAI with their models that nobody else has access, and you can only use them if you pay the OpenAI. But also if you say, hey, I'm, let's say, a Polish provider, and I will be using, let's say, Chinese models like DeepSeek. Well, then if I want to have this capacity, first I need to get access and you get approval from the US. And maybe the US will tell me, no, I will not give you access because you plan to use Chinese models. You have to use American models like Metalama and so on. So we have here like politics, we have here technology and science that are converging. And then we have to see, okay, if this becomes really a hard rule, will this foster also innovation in those countries who were left behind? Will they provide alternative technologies in order to stay competitive?
Yes, Rod, and I think the whole agenda of Trump is to have that type of power, that type of control, and really seek world domination, I would say. And I think that's the reason why he also obviously these different consortia and really try to lower the barriers for innovation. And while Trump may have his own intents, I think in general, it is perceived by the public and especially by the business sector as a positive signal. I mean, I think also in terms of the stock market, we've seen quite a big rally, Oracle gaining 7%, ARM gaining 17%, NVIDIA another 4%, Microsoft 3%. So in general, I think the public really likes the development and sort of the push towards being faster when it comes to innovation.
No, but I will leave like a thought for you, Max, in that it's rare that this summer we also discussed a report from Sequoia, where back then it was like 200 billion that were so far invested in AI. And they had estimated the revenue that these 200 billion had so far generated was around 3.6 billion in revenue from AI companies. So, Max, when you see that just a subset of companies are planning to invest 500 billion, then Microsoft 80 billion and so on, but then the revenues are still in like single billion digits, are we just like putting good money after bad money? Are we pouring the right resources, or maybe we are overextending ourselves?
I guess, good question. Let's see. Let me think about this in the sense that, because I have no way of knowing what the exact revenues are within a lot of those companies. All we see so far is that any sort of AI startup that came out, they always said, they tell you the good story, which is they grow like crazy. And, I just saw a company that basically allows you to prompt and build web apps. They say they get to 0 to 20 million ARR in 2 months. I was like, great. I guess how long will that be able to sustain? That's one question. And then the other thing, I guess, around the stock market, I guess there's one stock market is this. I think this is a quote from Warren Buffett, right? In the short term, the stock market is a beauty contest. In the long term, the stock market is a weighing machine. So at the moment, the hot thing to do is all sorts of AI. Right, that is where majority of people's attentions are. That's where Trump's attentions are, and that's where everybody will bet on. I think only time will tell whether or not this is sustainable from a revenue perspective, where it becomes a business instead of just technology. I think there's also an argument that even if it doesn't become like a super profitable business, you would argue, maybe things like Spotify, because at one point I remember Spotify was struggling with profitability because of the marginal costs of those music label charges them for every single time you play the music. If you think about, I guess the parallel is you could get to an OpenAI where it's so big around the world, it may not be the most profitable business on earth, but because it's being used by so many people, therefore you can justify that this makes sense. And then they can figure out other ways of making more money down the line. So I think it's the classic Silicon Valley kind of thinking, right? And then from a stock market rally perspective, given that we all know Trump is very likely going to increase the debt ceiling, number one. Number two, is also very likely to deregulate. He probably already started deregulation in some parts of the world. And the UK is also trying to follow. Right. I think Reeves, Chancellor Reeves came out and said that, the only way to deal with what did she say? She said something around like growth is ahead of net zero plans, something along that line for the gateway expansion. So you can see that that is the zeitgeist now in the market. It's like all systems go, let's go grow. But as a relatively cautious person, the question is, when will this turn? And when it doesn't turn, you still have to play, and it's still a musical chair.
Certainly. And we're coming to the end of this special episode on the new announcement of a 500 billion fund that has been announced by OpenAI, SoftBank, and some other players, and which has been endorsed by Trump, starting with a 100 billion investment into data centers and creating hundreds and thousands of jobs, according to Trump. We also spoke about the race of AI between the US and China, mostly dominated and enforced by the US. But we also spoke about that China actually now is also catching up, if we will, on open source platforms around AI. And I think this is going to be a very, very interesting year for AI in 2025. And with this, thank you so much, Rod and Max, for commenting on this. Dear audience, if you like what you heard, please subscribe to our newsletter, our channels, give us comments and feedback. We are looking forward to hearing from you. All right. Take care, guys.